Hey everybody, so this is going to be more of an announcement rather than an actual episode. Like the title suggests, I have decided to write a book. I'm actually 2 chapters in and I'm having a blast doing it. Part of the reason I wanted to make this episode is not only to let everyone know that I'm writing this book, but also that I'm going to be taking a brief break from the podcast. I've put a lot of thought into it, and even though I love writing these stories and sharing them with you, I have this. I feel like most writers, most creative people in every capacity, whether it's music, painting, writing, pick your craft. You keep a reserve of creative energy, and I don't want to completely deplete that reserve by writing stories for this podcast while I'm writing my book, because I feel like if I do that, one or the other is going to suffer. It's either the book is going to suffer or the podcast is going to suffer, and I don't want either of those things to happen. So I think it's the best decision to take a brief break while I write this book and then come back to the podcast after that. My plan is for this to take until the spring to write. And after that point, I'll start the editing process, which is it is a creative process, but it's kind of a different thing altogether. So once I have the meat of this writing done, I plan on returning to writing stories for this podcast. I won't feel as though I'm pulling from the well of ideas as much, or that I'll have a deeper well to pull ideas from, because I won't be dedicating all the time to this book. I've learned so much writing the short stories that I have shared here on Strange Whispers, and combined with a few short stories that I had written before I started Strange Whispers. Over the last year, I've written over 30, I think it's like 35 short stories, some of those being multi-part stories, so altogether, quite a few stories. So I've been taking the time on this podcast to explore different genres and try out different writing styles. And I think for this book that I've really landed on an idea that I think could facilitate something that is 70,000 to 80,000 words. And for some context, the longest single story that I've written on Strange Whispers was The Heart of Gaia, which topped out at around 30,000 words. And with this book that I'm writing, like I said, I'm going to need between 70 and 80,000 words. That's where it goes from being a novella to a book. Although, if this story I'm writing winds up being less than that, I'm okay publishing a novella. I don't want to, I don't want to like beef things up when they don't need to be. So I'm going to let this story land wherever it needs to land. And that's one of the exciting parts about all this. I have an idea of where this story is going, and I feel like it can facilitate this many pages, but I really don't know. I'm letting things happen organically. I do have a structure, and I do have a series of plot points and scenes and things that I would like to happen inside of the book. But even having only written 2 chapters, I've already discovered things about these characters and their settings that I didn't anticipate. And that's really where the fun is coming into play, where things are getting exciting, is based on this sort of improvisational exploration into this world. I know I'm talking super vague about this story and these characters, and that's because, number one, I don't want to give too much away about what I'm writing, and number two, I know that things are going to change as I go, and I don't want to say I'm writing X, Y, or Z and then give something that is completely different or significantly different. I will say for now that this story is about a group of teenagers that are fighting, are pitted against an ancient darkness that manifests around them in a variety of ways. And that's about all I'll say for now, because I don't I don't want to lead you astray after you if you decide to pick up this book. I don't want you to be like, this is not what he said this was going to be. So that's about all I'll say on that for now. I'm having an absolute blast writing it so far, and I'm really taking my time to figure out where to plug things in and what this story looks like. I want to I don't That's the thing with creating and doing anything in life. You're never going to be 100% ready. And when I made this decision to start writing this book, I had that sort of existential crisis like, am I ready for this? I've only written, 35-ish short stories, none of which have topped out anywhere close to a book's worth of writing. But that's the thing, is that you just have to do it. You have to it's like Shia LaBeouf in the meme, just do it. that's where that's where I'm at with this. I want to start it. Well, I've already started it, but I decided I'm just going to do it. I feel like I have enough. I have enough of a grasp on the technique to write a story and the rules. I know enough of the rules to be able to break them, and I know enough of the process to be able to craft something that I think is coherent, that will be entertaining. At least I hope. So we'll see. This first book might be a total a weird amalgamation of thoughts, but I really think that I'm really trying to stay positive, and I really think that it's going to head in a good direction, and it's already started to as this project takes flight. I already said it. I'll be back in the spring of 2025 to continue delivering these short stories to you. And in the meantime, I do plan on sharing updates, small updates as I go along. Nothing crazy, nothing big. I may share the first chapter of this story in the Patreon, on the Patreon page. I think I probably will. I might share the first chapter and maybe the second one as this goes along, just as a glimpse into where this story's headed after I get them a little more trimmed down and edited. But speaking of the Patreon, if you are on the Strange Whispers Patreon, first of all, thank you so much for being there. I can't thank you enough for all of your support. If you want to remain a member while I write this book until the spring, that would be amazing. If you feel like you need to take a break during that time, since I won't be delivering new content to you for a few months, that's completely okay. I totally understand. I also have another podcast called Analog Thoughts, and I've shared a link to Analog Thoughts in the Strange Whispers Patreon, on the Strange Whispers Patreon. Analog Thoughts is a little more, it's a little more educational. It doesn't tap into my creative writing reserves that I need to write this book. It's a little more laid back and subdued, or not subdued, but it's just a little more laid back, and I don't have to write stories for it. It's just kind of me talking on a microphone about interesting things that I've researched. So if you do have an interest in that sort of content, that is there for you. And if that interests you, if you're here because you like horror fiction and dark stories and you're like, I have no interest in that, I totally understand. But it's an option. It's there for you. And I didn't want to leave any of the patrons in the dark about anything while I write this story. And that's why I'm making this episode. It's an announcement, and it's letting you know that where my creative efforts, where my creative energies are going. And it's also a way for me to say, hey, to the patrons, hey, I'm flattered that you want to support me, but I also understand if you need or want to take a break or check out the Mount Analog Patreon page while I write this book. So you have options. If you're a patron, you have options. I've already been kind of going here for about 10 minutes or so, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. Once again, thank you for all of your support. Thank you for listening. I'm so excited to share more of this story with you, and I'm so excited for you to hear and read what I have written. I might be doing a thing where I have some beta readers. I want to get people who are genuinely interested in reading my manuscript on a more critical level. So if you're listening to this and you feel like, hey, that is something I'm interested in, you don't have to join the Patreon, but I will be sharing that over on the Patreon. But if you are interested in that, shoot me an email at strangewhisperspodcast@gmail.com, and I would love to send you a draft of my story, of my novel, once it's completed, of course, or once it's not completed, but once I have a first draft completed. Okay, I won't take any more of your time up. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. Thank you so much for giving me your time, and I look forward to sharing this book with you very soon. Have a glorious holiday season, and I will see you again in the spring. Keep creating.